right, here we go. UAP Studies Podcast. Very special episode today. We have an amazing guest. My name is Louis Borges. Joining me as always is Jason Gilmet. How are you, brother?
I'm very good, brother. How are you?
I'm good. I'm very excited. Today we have Caroline Cory, who is a true pioneer in the field, has appeared on television shows, movies, authored. I'm just going to list some of these things on the resume because it is quite impressive for sure. So most of you have seen her on TV shows such as The Unexplained with William Shatner, Ancient Aliens, and The Voice. She's produced and host movies such as Superhuman, The Inside Made Visible, Among Us, E.T. Contact, I Am the Universe, I Am Love. Multiple award winner, including Beverly Hills Film Festival, the Great Lakes Film Festival, Falcon Film Festival. The list of awards is longer than I can read with the length of show we have. And also an author. She's wrote The Visible and Invisible Worlds of God, Connecting to the Source, God Among Us. Without further ado, Caroline Cory, welcome to our show.
Hey, Louis. Hi, Jason. Thanks for having me.
So welcome to the show. Good to have you. We want to start off, maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, that, maybe some things people don't know. Also what got you into the interest of not only UAP phenomenon, but you're big on, consciousness and mind over matter, E.S.P. So tell us a little bit what got you all into this and some of your past projects.
Well, it actually started out at a very young age. When I was 5 years old, I started having experiences. I would see angels and spirits, and I would sense things before they happen. I would feel the energy around someone, things like that. Or I would see something and then it would happen the next day. So I thought, I was 5 years old, right? I thought, oh, well, everybody does that. It's not a big deal. And it was later that I realized, well, not everybody does that spontaneously. Maybe they do, but they don't explore it. So that asking these questions got me in the field of consciousness. And because I realized it was my consciousness that was tapping into something. And so academically, I enrolled in psychology in college just to also rule out the possibility that I was crazy. Something was wrong with my brain, that wasn't the case. Thank God. But anyway, so my research in the field of consciousness spans over 20 years. And I was writing books and training people, leading workshops. And eventually I started working with scientists because we would have validation. So for example, we would do experiments on remote viewing or, affecting an object at a distance and things like that to measure the effect of consciousness. And we would have astounding correlations, like it would happen exactly the way we thought it would. And so working with scientists over and over on these types of paranormal subjects, I realized, like, wait a minute, this is real. This stuff is real. So we need to be sharing it with the public more, the mainstream. And that's how I started making films about these subjects, including UFOs, because I realized basically that I was trying to make the paranormal normal.
Right. And the consciousness with UFOs now seems to be a lot more prevalent. Like it seems to be the two are now linked together. Even the way that these things tend to fly, it's almost at the speed of thought. And consciousness, these crafts have a sense of consciousness to them. So did you link that together early on? Is that something that you've noticed about the way that these things maneuvered, that there's a greater consciousness there?
Oh my God, definitely. So, but we have to be careful with the UFO phenomenon because it's bigger than just one thing. Okay.
Right.
So there are certain things that I believe actually are human technology. And these are not so much connected to consciousness in the way we think, but a big majority of UFOs seem to be connected to consciousness because they respond to your thought. And there is an instant manifestation of that connection. So I'll give you an example. Actually, recently, like a year ago or something like that, I was at my house and I just felt the urge to just go outside. And it was 9 p.m. or something like that. And I go outside, I look up and I see these 3 balls of light literally bouncing off of each other. So I looked up because I believe in this. I've had so many experiences. So I thought, oh, well, maybe I can see if there's intelligence behind this, you know? So I started to connect with them. And I said, of course, telepathically, just a thought. Well, if there's intelligence behind these light kind of bouncing off of each other, then show me something, like respond to my question. And all of a sudden, these 3 spheres of light became 4 and then 6 and then 8. So I thought, okay, that's a nice trick.
Yeah.
Give me more, like, let's see what else. And so then I started walking, in one direction about half a mile outside my house. And so I'm walking, and these lights are hovering right above me, literally like following me. And then I change direction and I go another half mile in another direction. And these lights are literally right above me. So I don't know, am I crazy? Actually, then I bump into a neighbor. She's walking her dog, right? And then I said, well, do you see these lights right above us? And so she looks up and she goes, yeah, that's interesting. And then she goes about walking her dog. Like,
Oh my God. Yeah.
So anyway, but that was one of the most striking examples where it's like an instant recognition.
Now, I've seen you on Ancient Aliens, which obviously the premise behind that show is a couple of things. There's a few different theories, i.e., panspermia. Maybe we were seated on this planet. Maybe this is a 3rd or 4th go with a couple of resets in between. So I just, when you look at ancient monoliths and things that are built in crazy levels of technology, what are your thoughts on have they been coming here forever? Are they related to us somehow? Are we them in the past? Or how do you kind of string it all together as somebody who's been involved with many areas of this phenomenon, right from the ancient times up until now, and what you're working on? What are your sort of personal thoughts when you sum it all up? What do you think?
Well, I think that the human DNA, at least the human species, didn't come from here, because there's actual evidence that around 200,000 years ago, there was a change in the DNA, the way it's mutated. And since that time, it is where, the current human DNA is at. But I was actually talking to Gary Nolan, who is a very famous geneticist at Stanford. At the time I was making my previous film, and I asked him, I said, do we know where the human DNA came from? And he said, look, what I can tell you is that it turns out that the human DNA follows what we call a Moore's law. So Moore's law actually usually applies to electronics, electrical systems and things like that, which means that every specific period of time in history, the complexity of the system doubles.
Yeah.
Right? So what they found that the DNA followed that same pattern. So what happened, they took the DNA pattern the way it is today, and they realized that time period is 600,000 years. So they went back 600,000 years from today, and they saw that the DNA was pretty much half the complexity as what it is now. They go back another 600,000 years, it's half of that. Another 600,000 years, half of that, and so on and so forth, all the way to the very beginning, when it first originated, and they realized that they actually went back 9 billion years.
Twice as long as the Earth has been around.
Bingo. So this means that the human DNA is 9 billion years, 4.5 billion years before planet Earth existed. So hello.
Been
Yeah.
somewhere for sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I,
absolutely.
Isaac Asimov. I always have a hard time saying his name.
Asimov.
Asimov. Yeah, he's got a great book series, the Foundation trilogies, which I like the concept of it, where it's about basically putting things in plan for thousands and thousands of years before, just to basically make sure that at that point we've reached, an epic level, if you will. And I think the long-term plan here, if it is that we're seeded from somewhere else and brought here, it could be, a universal long-term plan, but we're so short in our lifespans that this is, a little bit beyond our pay grade.
If they wanted it to be faster, they could, because you look at technologies now like CRISPR or gene editing software. I mean, if it were to get out of control, the ethical implications are huge. But
Right.
in essence, you could conjure up designer babies. You want a 6 foot tall, blue-eyed, blonde-haired baby? No problem. We could do that. We don't know the long-term effects on our reproductive, parts and everything else, what would happen. But if they really wanted us to evolve a million years, they probably could do that, right? But maybe there's no gentle way of doing that. Maybe it needs to kind of go with that same flow of evolution we've already been accustomed to.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So, I mean, there's just too much evidence that not just that the human DNA originated somewhere else, but also that we were visited by non-human civilizations. I mean, it's everywhere, archaeologically, or again through the DNA patterning, or just history, myths, different cultures and scriptures and so on, so on. I mean, so everything is wrong? I don't think so.
Yeah, it's impossible. It's like saying there's no life in the universe, and now we're finding all these exoplanets, and every star you can see has at least one planet. I mean, our star has how many? 8? If you count Pluto, right? So it's mathematically more improbable that there isn't life than to say there's not a chance. Like, the numbers are staggering in favor of this having some credence, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of it just so doesn't make sense. I can't even imagine that. I mean, just look around on this planet, right? I mean, you see hundreds, thousands of breeds of animals and plants and fish and this and that, and so however this came about, the variety of species that exist just on this planet. And then the human species was born, and that's it. Like, we run out of, we run out of ideas of how to, have another type of intelligent being. I mean, come on,
It's the height of human arrogance to think it's just us, we know it all. And that's kind of what's keeping us trapped in our level of civilization as well, too.
Exactly.
I wanted to ask you, there was a documentary I saw with you, and forgive me, I don't remember which one it is, but you were doing experiments with children.
Yes.
And, gifted kids, or just to see if we're all born with this gift. Is it something we shed through, our environment, or being told that, that what you saw, you didn't really see, like it kind of gets dumbed down. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about, what your thoughts are on that, or some, cool information you might be able to shed on that subject.
Yeah, so that documentary is Superhuman, the invisible made visible.
Yep.
And that documentary was also, to me, is a breakthrough, because it basically it shows, it demonstrates in real time, scientifically, the connection between consciousness, intention, and the physical world. So, we hear everywhere, your thoughts create, or, your state of mind affects your health, or it has an effect on your body and stress level, all that good stuff. So we've been hearing all of this, right? But no one's kind of shown the connection between the two. So that's what I did in the film, Superhuman, the invisible made visible. So we set up several experiments, from testing the effect of consciousness intention on water, changing the water, the pH in water, the electrical conductivity in water, telekinesis, moving an object, with your thoughts, demonstrating how thinking or, speaking through your voice, that is also a frequency that changes the pattern of your cells and so on and so forth. So we were demonstrating all of these experiments in the film. And then I stumbled on these kids that who were reading with blindfolds on. And of course, first I thought, okay, is this a trick or what's going on here? And I'm making a film. I mean, I want to make sure that I'm not misrepresenting, what I'm talking about. So I went and I visited them myself. And the first kids that I encountered were in the UK. And I was blown away. I mean, first of all, not only can they read totally blindfolded, but, they don't know. So people will say, oh, well, maybe they memorized the book. No, because I would just hold up a piece of paper, or I would show them something, an object that they don't know. They don't know what to expect, and they're able to see it. They're able to see behind their head, behind their back. They're able to see in another room. So, I mean, even if you're a skeptic or you think, oh, maybe there's a little hole in the mask or something, this is definite proof that this is not a trick. Plus, they're playing ping pong, they're on a bicycle, rollerblades. So it's just so mind blowing. So then after that, I was like, whoa, who else is doing that? And then I discovered other groups. I can't talk for all the groups. I can talk about the groups that I know that I've visited. And there is something there. To me, this is the ultimate proof that with the proper training, you can reprogram the functioning of your brain. Your brain is supposed to see when there's light. The object reflects the light gets reflected through your eye. The light bounces off the object, then you see, oh, this is an object. But if there's no light, technically there's no sight, there's no vision. And yet, what you're saying, you're telling your brain there is light, even though there is no light because it's completely blacked out, and, or for example, when it's behind you or in another room. So how does that work?
Right.
So to me, it is the ultimate proof that your consciousness, first of all, is fundamental. It's outside the body. It's not a product. It's not a byproduct coming out of the brain. It's not a physical thing. And that you can program your brain to do what you want it to do. I mean, if you can do that, then you can master your body. You can make it shift things, heal. You can make it do anything you want. So that's why I thought that discovery was incredible, in the film. A lot of people got very, very impressed with that piece.
Even on the most basic level, people that are skeptical, if you said, okay, well, do you believe that if you woke up tomorrow and said, it's a really crappy day, do you think that would influence your day and maybe make it worse? Oh, yeah, for sure. Okay, so if telling yourself today's a good or a bad day could affect the outcome, that also stands true for everything in the quantum physics level. Manifestation, meditation, quieting the mind, getting to different levels of vibration. If you believe that saying it's a good or bad day works, everything else must also fall into that. You can't refute that extra evidence because it doesn't fit in with your line of thinking or what you've been taught your whole life. It's an elephant in the room at that point.
Exactly. And people will say sometimes, because I work with a lot of scientists, and some scientists would say, yeah, but there's not enough evidence. And I'm like, even if there's one evidence,
Yeah, for sure.
if there's one person or one way that you could see behind this wall without you knowing what, then you broke the laws of physics. I mean, basically you went against all the laws that we know of. And so even if there's one example that's good enough to at least look into the phenomenon as a scientist anyway. So yeah, I mean, and to be honest, if you really, really look, there's plenty of evidence and plenty of research and a lot of experiments that were done. For example, just the pH, William Tiller actually did that experiment a while back, with a group of people concentrating on water. They changed the pH in water. And I think they put it in a mail and sent it to somebody else to see if it would maintain the pH that, there's a lot of experiment. There's scientific papers. There's all sorts of things if people really, really want to look into it.
I like your approach of, show rather than tell. And, leading up into your new movie, A Tear in the Sky, that is the theme throughout the entire movie. In fact, you even had William Shatner on there and ask him, what do you think? What if we could actually set up this phenomenon, get it on tape? I mean, it sounds like the perfect storm. Like, yeah, go ahead. There's just been there, done that. But you had a different approach to it. You had some gentlemen who we've previously interviewed, brilliant people, scientists, inventing, new instrumentation to allow us to maybe actually get some data we never previously got. So maybe tell us a little bit about what led up to A Tear in the Sky.
Yeah, so to be honest, originally I was going to do the sequel for Superhuman. And then that was 2 years ago. And all of a sudden I get this boom, inspiration. No, do something on UFOs. And I'm like, okay, I was just going to follow my intuition and see where that takes me. And so so that was 2 years ago, right? I thought if I'm going to do something about UFOs, which I had explored before, it's nothing new, but I wanted to understand not just, what type of technology, if they appear in the sky and things like that. I mean, that's fascinating. But what mechanism does the universe have to allow space travel? I'm more interested in the mechanics of life, of the universe. So because of that, I believe that there are, nodes in space, points in space that allow a sort of a warping of the fabric of space-time that allow all sorts of anomalies to happen exactly in these points. And so, therefore, at the time, I called the film A Tear in the Sky 2 years ago. And because I thought it would be some sort of tear or opening or something. And that was December. By March, we started researching how would I go about this. My signature as a filmmaker, as you saw, is to bring science, to bring validation, to bring credibility to a paranormal subject. And so I started looking for scientists first, and then I stumbled on Kevin Day. And Kevin Day is the radar operator who was on the USS Nimitz in 2004. He was the first one who captured that Tic Tac video, for those who are familiar with that whole story. And so I called Kevin and then I said, hey, I want to do a scientific approach to the phenomenon. Let's stop saying it's us, it's them, blah, blah, blah. Let's go and see if we can capture them ourselves from scratch. How would we do it scientifically? And he goes, oh my God, I've been thinking about the same thing for 2 years. I have these two scientists already on board, and I have David Mason, and so I thought, oh, well, since they have the group together, why not? So I said, I'm going to make a film, and I wanted scientific. And as a filmmaker, the first thing you do, I don't know how others do it, but you look for other similar material, to make sure you're not repeating, you're not copying or something. And I was shocked. I was shocked to discover that there were no scientific research done on the UFO subject. I'm like, oh my God, like no one's had this idea. Like, how is that possible? So I was even more convinced. I kind of understood my intuition to do this because it has never been done before. And so by March, we had the team together. We had the production, the whole thing ready. In July, we were in production filming. And then by September, we were cutting. In terms of filmmaking, this is lightning speed. And so that's kind of how it all came about.
Especially with COVID going on. There was all these regulations and everything that, and it slowed the process down. So kudos for you guys for getting through that.
Yeah, exactly. And we didn't know. And I was like just going. It was so weird. I mean, I just knew that I was going in the right direction. I just had to do it. And things just kind of just falling into place, including William Shatner. So, and as you know, you guys talked to David Mason, and that was an incredible gift. I mean, the guy, first of all, he's a genius, inventor, technology expert, but he also had all of this equipment, very sophisticated equipment that allowed us to set it up in this way, triangulate. We're talking, I mean, I'm sure he mentioned it to you, but for those who are listening to this episode, we had all kinds of cameras, night vision, FLIR cameras, which is a whole different expanded range of infrared spectrum analyzers, radiation detectors, magnetometers, RF devices. I mean, the whole thing in 3 locations, so we can achieve triangulation and set up for 5 days nonstop. And so with that sort of setup, I mean, I was 100% sure that it had never been done to that scale. So something should happen, you would think, right?
Right.
For
You had
sure.
enough equipment anyways.
The thing I was amazed by was David Mason's invention, where he thought, if you look in the sky, you see a light. As an observer, you only get so much information out of that. So he takes a camera and modifies it so that light now becomes a sound waveform with a lot of unique identifying characters. So very quickly, you look at a 747, it's always going to have that similar unique waveform of a 747. And then to go one step further than that, he says, okay, well, I'm taking light and making it into sound. I'm going to reproject it back out there at the same level it's coming into us. So rather than like SETI trying to communicate with AM and FM and UHF, this is taking whatever frequency they could potentially already be emitting and sending it back in their own language, even if it's just on an infantile level, like mama, mama. But if they hear what they're sending, they're going to know we copy and we can send it back. Like it's just a brilliant aspect, and a very unique mind would think of something like that. It's never been done.
Yeah, never been done. And also we're broadcasting at 800 terabytes.
Right.
I mean, for those who understand, this is like insane.
Yeah.
And, like you were saying, instead of the radio frequencies or, try to decide, it just feels so primitive. So having done that in the film, not only the whole setup was a first, but having that sort of inventions and technology, I mean, just brought it to a whole new level. And so that's why I'm just super, super excited about this film, because it's not just a film. I mean, what we end up discovering, as you know, is not just the typical stuff, but I think we show very clearly, speaking of showing, very, very clearly on camera, the different anomalies. I mean, the stuff that hovers around, that changes direction, that zigzags, the stuff that appears, tilts, rotates, disappear, registers cold, the stuff that rains down at 60,000 miles an hour, and then finally that tear, that opening in the sky, which was it's crazy. I mean, scientists are still scratching their heads. I'm waiting for someone to still come out and tell me, oh, we've seen this before. This is some phenomenon, blah, blah, blah. So I am getting messages and emails sometimes from scientists who have watched the film, trying to offer some sort of explanation, but so far nothing's checking out. So this is, I think we're onto something huge here.
You basically replicated the Tic Tac video. I mean, even the guys on the gunner footage talked about, hey, they way up here is a fleet of them. They're all raining down. And even what Lou Elizondo talks about with these things being, intermedium based. They can go from air to water. It doesn't seem to matter. Crazy speeds and G-forces that would kill any living creature. So you basically replicated the same video that the New York Times released that has changed this entire subject. And you did that within 5 days. So it's either you had the right equipment to catch this, or it's so prevalent that anybody could catch it. And it's almost like we should be spending more attention on that, because if you think the government's going to come clean with what they know, we're still 80 years in the making for that full story.
Yeah. And just think about this, Louis, like if we did that in 5 days,
Exactly.
you're not going to tell me that the government, with all their satellites and radars, when they come out and say we don't have data or we have 400 cases, but we don't know what they are. I mean, we're civilians, and we come out and we
And look at the
collect
difference in the
real
budget.
data. Yeah.
You don't have trillions in black budget money to do this.
Yes. And what you're saying, the question is what you said, you're using the right equipment, or what is it? It's actually both, because some of these things that were falling down, these were caught on FLIR cameras and the infrared, so you couldn't see them with the naked eye.
Yeah.
So it's true that you have to have proper equipment. And we were so lucky, thanks to David Mason again, that it wasn't just one FLIR. We had 8 FLIRs. And for those who don't know, this type of FLIR cameras, these aren't the things you buy online. I mean, you do, but it's like industrial grade, $50,000 a piece. We had 8 of them, and that's how we were able to capture some of these anomalies. So that's one advantage. And also, is it prevalent? Is that the reason why? I think it is also in that area.
Yeah.
That's another reason why we decided to go back, because it kind of made sense when I connected with Kevin Day and we were discussing, okay, so where should we go? Then I was like, wait a minute,
Right.
you were there in Catalina area. And then after the USS Nimitz, there was the USS Princeton, the USS Omaha, all in the same area, talking about those Tic Tac objects. So let's make it a story, so let's see if we can go back. And to be honest, that was an idea. I was just praying for one thing. I was like, come on, you guys, just like show up, like give me one thing. This is a lot of expense, a lot of money, a lot of effort. And I was blown away. We were blown away when it wasn't just one thing. First of all, it was multiple things. And for the exact shape, Tic Tac, look, traveling against the wind, coming down exactly in the same pattern. I mean, I think it was done on purpose or something.
If ever you needed to manifest, that was the time.
I know, that was insane. So
one thing that I did like about the documentary was the emotional state of, even Kevin Day and Gary Voorhees, just the way that they were about their sighting and how much of a profound impact it made on them, that they totally jumped on board this project and said, absolutely, we'll do this, right? I think most people forget that it's not just a sighting, but sometimes it's a really profound life change. And it appears to be that way for Kevin Day. I mean, he was just so emotional, and, just, it's nice to see that somebody in the military can be so emotional and saying, hey, this is something definitely worth looking into. And you have that in your documentary. You can actually see that human side to them, which I really liked that aspect of it for sure.
Yeah, to be honest, originally I wasn't going to focus on it because it was out, on YouTube and things like that. So a lot of people were familiar with the story somehow, somewhat. But when I interviewed Kevin, he was so emotional. So he touched me so much that I was like, wait a minute, this needs to be in the story. I mean, this has to be weaved in, because that's what started this whole conversation, because they were told to not talk about this, like why? And so it turned out to be, actually it ended up being my favorite part, like you. It was so weaving in the real emotional story of these guys and the science made it more current, it's connected to real people. It's not this sciencey thing, that's totally impersonal. And so yeah. And when you do a documentary, you have a storyline and outline, but things shift as you interview people and you discover things. And that was definitely a good way. So thanks for saying that. I think a lot of people related to it as well.
I think the people fueling the whole disclosure movement are people that have had that, where they know what they saw. It affected them in a way, sometimes not so good. I'm sure a lot of people, look, we interviewed Calvin Parker, and for years and years and years, he never opened his mouth, didn't even tell his wife. They're not up there waving the flag saying, hey, everybody, look at me. I have a cool story. They don't want to talk about it. It's the opposite of what you would expect if you were trying to get famous. So that tells you that there's a real deep impact. And again, for a lot of people, it went against everything they were ever taught, religiously or otherwise, or even just, what they did was so bizarre that their brain just couldn't fully comprehend what the hell had happened. And a lot of them only recall after hypnotherapy, transgression therapy, things to try to help them get this out from their subconscious, because the brain likes to hide trauma. It likes to sequester it away. And so, I mean, it's the human element of all of this phenomenon, I think, that's really keeping it going, or it would have fizzled out decades ago.
Yeah. And it just shows you how it ended up being so perfectly orchestrated, because we started with their story. We didn't know we were going to find the exact same TikTok. We didn't know at the time, right? So they tell their story. After they tell their story, we find the exact same looking TikToks and the things falling down, raining down in exactly the same way they describe it. And of course, at the end, the wormhole discovery thing. And it's almost like they made this, they told their story, and they came out of this film, this whole story, kind of like they found closure.
They were vindicated.
They were vindicated. Like they proved their point that, hey, we weren't crazy.
Yeah.
So it's a great story of retribution. Can we say that? I guess, I mean, it's sort of a retribution in a way. So, I mean, it's fascinating.
The one aspect too is like usually with UFO sightings and stuff like that is that it's not a repeatable thing, so you can't experiment there. You guys actually went there, sat there for about 5 days, and you had repeatable experiments that you were able to capture and get data on. So that's actually one of the first times I've ever seen that. Like, I've never seen somebody be able to reproduce or capture something where somebody said, hey, this took place 2 years after the fact, for crying out loud. So yeah, that was amazing. Good job on that.
Well, actually, their TikTok object was 2004.
Yeah.
And then the subsequent ones was USS Omaha, USS Kidd. That was, I think, 2014 and 15, I believe. And then ours, it was obviously 2021. So yeah, that's insane. I mean, but that shows you how, it was somehow orchestrated. I mean, especially ending with that whole opening wormhole thing at the end. Who would have thought? I mean, it's you start to, speaking of intelligence, some sort of communication. People ask me, do you think they knew you were doing that they made themselves available and photograph? Because again, 5 days, how many times do you hear of people who go out on expeditions, and like nothing happens,
Yeah.
It's like every Bigfoot documentary on television, still waiting to see the Bigfoot.
Nothing ever happens. And I was thinking, like, because I funded the project, because I was so sure I had to do this. It didn't really matter. I was like, just go for it. But as we were getting closer and I'm paying all the bills, I was like, whoa, wait a minute. And as you saw, even from the trailer, people who will see even just the trailer, you can tell this is a big production.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not filming with our iPhones. I mean, we were filming with Red cameras. For those who know, these are the most, expensive, sophisticated film camera. We had 3 crews. So we literally had about 10 cameras and drones and stuff running at the same time over 5 days nonstop. That was a very big production anyway, I'm not a studio. I mean, and so the more we were getting closer and closer, I was thinking, 5 days? That's not enough, like, what if it's a Bigfoot, bad joke, on me. And, but, the scientists that I was working with who are in the film are hardcore scientists. They're like, forget about the C word, meaning consciousness, communication, intelligence, forget it. We're nuts and bolts, let's go measure, which was good in a way because we wanted that type of science because that has never been done. So I was fine with that, but I was kind of on my own in terms of, so I was like in my hotel room, the day before, I was like, okay, guys, please, show me one thing, just show up. And then of course, I knew it was going to be July 14th. And so we planned it that week. And sure enough, July 14th, boom, that was the first sighting.
And you had phenomenon on the first day. The boys we had on last show, David Altman and David Mason, they said that they had their equipment set up, but it wasn't quite communicating perfectly yet. And so they had phenomenon, and they're like, well, even if a UFO shows up 10 feet away, we can't physically capture it, even though we're here and ready with all this other stuff, but it showed up immediately. You didn't have to wait until the very end. You got signs right away that you guys were onto something.
Yeah, definitely. They were actually, Catalina was more, there were more stuff there right away. For us, we were on the shore on the Laguna Beach side. It was slightly different, but we did have problems. Oh my God. So it took hours and hours and hours to set up and calibrate all the cameras and all the equipment and correlated, so it's all time-stamped together and things like that. And also don't forget, no one's ever done this. And we had never done this. This group had never worked together before. And, this was a first time location, first time everything. And so we spent hours and hours figuring all these equipment, devices and everything. And then when it got all plugged in and connected, there was a power outage.
Oh, no way.
Yes, it was. So we lost like 2 hours of data, and then it messed up all the timestamps. So we had to oh my God. I mean, there was a lot of things like that happened that we learned from, for sure, while the UFOs were showing up, so it was one of those things, but thank goodness, something, I mean, we ended up with incredible, right? I mean,
Right. Yeah, and I find it funny that the Congress recently had their hearing with I'm going to pick your brain about that, but I thought it was funny when they said we have no good footage. We have, this is the best footage that we have, which is like probably one of the worst ones I've ever seen. There's some stuff online that they could have pulled that was, really good stuff. But as your video shows, like that would have been proof that I would have looked into if I was part of that team, said, are they onto something here? Because it's not just amateur scientists that you had on major scientists, some of them from the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies, someone from UAP X, like you really went above and beyond on this one. So they should have advised you.
I know, I was blown away. I mean, it's kind of embarrassing, honestly. Like you said, they could have, why didn't they show the TikTok video?
Right.
I mean, it's like, it doesn't make sense. And then when they showed that one, I was like, where are we looking? Like, what are we looking at? Like, and in fact, one of the congressmen asked, can you pull that clip again and tell us exactly where we should be looking? I don't know. I don't get it. Because like you're saying, there's so much credible footage available, to the public, especially the TikTok. I mean, it's theirs, it's the Navy's. So I don't get it. There's something strange about that. And also, like you were saying, I mean, we had credible scientists in our team, just looking at the footage that we captured in the film. They don't have to go all the way to the wormhole, but just some of the very obvious anomalies. I mean, the stuff that comes out zigzags and goes back, the stuff that's cold. I mean, it's super clear in my film, super clear.
Right.
You don't have to wonder, like, what am I looking? Where is, I mean, so I don't understand. So I'm hoping that someone will find my film. I don't know what I think we're going to be contacting someone, or there's some efforts to contact some congressmen and see what can be done, because it just doesn't even make sense. We're civilians in 5 days collecting that amount and that quality data. For them to say we don't have data, it just doesn't make any sense.
They could have asked anybody that appeared at the 2001 National Press Club, Stephen Greer or anybody else, any former military, Robert Salas, the list is a mile long. There's people there, they know it. It's just a way of appeasing somebody to say, yeah, we did it. We gave you your 15 minutes. Didn't find anything. Like they're not going to have random public people that they can't control and don't know what they're going to say. They're not going to open that can of worms. They don't have to. They're the government. They still get the veto. If they say this is all you get, that's all you get. What are you going to do, right?
Yeah, but it's also their video, the TikTok, it's a Navy video. So for them to say this is the best that we have, it's a lie, actually. And so, or they're going to say, well, whoever, I don't remember the name of the congressman who brought that up, but maybe he's going to say, well, I didn't, that's all I am familiar with, but that's not even an excuse. It just doesn't cut it.
The whole body of evidence will never be brought into the public eye, unfortunately. No. So it's going to be up to people like you in the civilian world, people that willing to spend money and take a big risk. That might be the biggest change to really change this, because again, for decades, it's been the same old, we'll launch an investigation. Nope. Didn't find anything. Go back to your life. So thanks to people like you.
Well, it's not going to work anymore. And that's what I'm hoping to do with this film. And as you know, I'm not the only one. This film is the only one that did it in real time, live, scientifically. But there's, as you know, hundreds of people who have incredible real footage. Yep. So put the two together, then I think this film, especially, that's why I'm trying to publicize this like crazy. Not that it's a film, but because of what we are uncovering here, I'm hoping that this will push them to release data, because it's just going to take one person to say, wait a minute, these are civilians doing it scientifically in 5 days. Look at that. These are credible scientists working with NASA, working with this, so there's no excuse. So that's what I'm saying. I'm hoping this film is going to push them to release the data.
Also, the implications of, like, if you have a tear in the sky, like your movie title, at above Catalina Island, how many other locations on planet Earth is there these portals that appear? Are they, designated at these specific spots, or is it something that they're able to do anywhere? And like you mentioned, you captured a lot of different things in the sky with different cameras that would see, it was infrared and all that you had. We can't see it with the naked eye, but they're still there, which then brings up the questions of, are they here constantly, like nonstop, or are they just appearing occasionally to do something, right? It's just that it led me to have a lot more questions at the end of the movie than I had answers, for sure, because now I was like, whoa. So kudos on that.
Yeah, but that's the idea, to make you question, the fabric of reality itself. And so, of course, I have my theory on it. But yeah, like you're saying, sound waves, we don't see them, but they exist. We hear the magnetic field. We don't see it, but it exists. We know, we can measure it. We can literally measure the magnetic field. So the fact that we don't see it doesn't mean it's not there, doesn't mean it doesn't have an effect, doesn't mean it doesn't serve a purpose. And I think that's exactly what we're doing here, is using the technology that allows us to capture things that we couldn't normally see with the naked eye. That's why the infrared, the advanced FLIR spectrum allows us to do that. That's how we captured those raining Tic Tacs and the other objects as well. And so if we do more of that, which is what we're doing actually, and we start to see that there are these magnetic anomalies, I believe that they are in specific locations, and they can also be warped in different locations as well. But there are, I want to say, permanent locations because they have to do with the geometry of the planet itself. Now, this is my theory. I can't prove it right now, but I'm working on it.
Nice. The sequel movie.
Yeah, of course, the sequel series. Yeah, so and I think that certain points, these nodes, these hot spots, have to do with the magnetic field around the planet. Is that what happens in those specific areas? The magnetic field is kind of concentrated. It creates crisscrossing lines. In fact, NASA knows about this in outer space anyway, where the magnetic, they call it magnetic reconnection, where these magnetic lines crisscross. And what happens where they crisscross, you're kind of warping this space-time fabric. So when you do that, you can also bend light. Therefore, you can, if you're sitting on the Earth, if you're bending light, so then something appears, disappears, you could speed because of the warping of the magnetic lines, if you will. So there's all sorts of anomalies that would be explained by figuring out how these nodes function, the tear in the sky. And I call it a tear because I feel that exactly at those nodes, you're actually outside time and space. You're not in any time space. So you can pretty much transport yourself at any other node instantaneously, faster than the speed of sound, faster than the speed of light. And so that's kind of my theory. So I feel that it would explain a lot.
Now, you had Michio Kaku on the video as well. That'd be definitely a person to talk to about those theories. He can probably do the math and all that for you, right?
Exactly. So yeah, Michio Kaku is incredible. He's I just talked to him today, actually. He's a pleasure. First of all, obviously, he's so knowledgeable, but as a filmmaker, he's so eloquent. He gives you incredible bites without you even asking. You're like, boom, just like from the first take. He knows his stuff so well and how it answers even the UFO questions or even extraterrestrial question. He's such a pleasure to work with. So he's definitely my go-to person. William Shatner is a totally different ball game. That was also very interesting to have him as well. Do you want me to tell you about that?
Yeah, please. Absolutely.
So yeah, we had all this science and all these scientists, and I was very happy. But at one point, it was towards the end of production, we were thinking, okay, so this is going to be great because we have the science and the explanation, scientific explanation. But one of the reasons why I'm making these films is to, again, bring these paranormal subjects and make them normal, make them relatable, accessible to the normal, the general public. So I thought I needed one person, to bridge the gap, that's so relatable that even if you're not into UFOs, you're going to want to watch this film. And, of course, he came to mind because I've worked with him before and I've met him before. And somebody said, well, what about William Shatner? I was like, okay, it's a long shot. We'll try. Speaking of how everything was orchestrated. So literally within days, I called them and I said, this is what we're doing. This is who's in the film. Would you like to participate? And he said, yes. So that was very helpful because, he's not a scientist, but he's he's into space travel. He just went to space, the mysteries of the universe. In fact, he thinks science is still pretty primitive. It's more the mechanics of the universe, consciousness, things like that. So that's why he was perfect to give us that, perspective as he was commenting on the stuff we were doing.
Yeah, it's just always good to see William Shatner. He's just, he's got that calming presence. to him. Like he just seems like the type of person you want next to you if ever you're at the hospital for a surgery or something like that, just to calm you down. He's got that presence to him, at least for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Louis, do you have any final questions for our guest today?
No, I will. I just want to say thank you so much to Caroline Cory. It's been an amazing interview. We've been huge fans of your work all the way along. We're very glad to put a positive light on your current work. I think it was groundbreaking. I think it was a one of a kind. And I think anybody who's interested in this topic or even halfway there should definitely check it out. Now, where can people follow you or learn more about your other projects?
The best thing is for people to go to the website, etearinthesky.com. And there they can watch the film. They'll see all the different platforms where it's playing right now. And there's a contact tab if they want to send me, email or something like that, and stay kind of updated on all the different things we're doing in that subject. But if people are interested in my other work on consciousness, they can go to superhumanfilm.com or carolinecory.com. This is all my consciousness work, but for now, etearinthesky.com is the most current and the most groundbreaking, I want to say, because it's leading us to some really, really big questions.
Caroline Cory, thank you so much for coming on UAP Studies. Hope we get to have you on again. And anytime that you do another documentary, write a book or anything, you're always welcome here as well. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. You guys are so much fun. This was great. And let's do it again.